leadership session in Napa this fall.
That's exciting. Well, we're already recording, so I think that is an easy thing for us.
You already did. Then you did it.
Yeah,
that's the easy piece. Nobody has any crazy travel stories on the way back from Israel?
No. Why would we want? Oh, wait a second, Barb. Did you have a little travel story?
I had a horrible trip getting out to Israel. I do believe I powered through on day one with less than 90 minutes of sleep, and thanks to a walk along the Mediterranean with Kristen, which got me through dinner. But I'm very thankful to say I had no travel issues coming back.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, it was actually quite easy getting home. It was, pretty easy.
And Kristen, you stayed for a few extra days.
I did. I stayed for 3 more days with our Paradox Israel team back in Tel Aviv. It was great. Continued the journey of spending time learning and experiencing the culture, and got to do fun things with the team, go to dinner, kind of see what they do. We even had yoga in the office every other week. So I got to do yoga with Yuval, who is our yoga instructor who comes into the office. And that's very common in Israel. Culturally, a lot of companies do have some kind of wellness programs where they might have somebody come on site. So I got to participate in that too.
That's great. I'm torn on intra-office yoga. And I never really feel, I'm comfortable, not comfortable. I don't know.
Look, I'm no good at it, but it was a lot of fun. And she taught the class in Hebrew. So I just had to kind of watch and listen, which was a lot of fun too. So another cultural experience that I got to have.
I love it. All right. Well, let's jump right in. Is everybody ready to start?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go.
Welcome to the CXR channel, our premier podcast for talent acquisition and talent management. Listen in as the CXR community discusses a wide range of topics focused on attracting, engaging, and retaining the best talent. We're glad you're here.
All right, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Recruiting Community Podcast. I'm your sort of host today on this beautiful May day. I actually have nothing to say, believe it or not, on this topic. I might poke a little bit here and there, but I did not go on this amazing trip that we've brought some folks in to talk about. But so in the meantime, while we're getting this set up, I just want to remind everybody, cxr.org/podcast. You can see all of our previous episodes. You can see what's coming up. That's a great place to check. Where you can see those things. We're on the Twitter and the LinkedIn and the YouTube and all the social channels where you can check those out too. Usually we'll stream those live. So if you see a chat box or comment window there, go ahead and chime in. We get back to everybody who leaves a comment. Well, the good comments. We skip some of the really not great comments, but we're going to jump in. We do have a fun topic today. I want to get right started. So here we go. I'm going to bring in my spirit animal, Mr. Crispin. Gerry, how are you?
I am wonderful. And it was an amazing trip.
Well, so before we bring in our amazing guests, why don't you, this is not the first trip that Career Crossroads has helped to coordinate and to really push. You've been part of this founding team that's put this program together. Why don't you share just a kind of a little bit high level view of kind of what that program is and what you do when you take folks on the adventure?
Well, the whole idea of this was to kind of step outside the US box and look at how culture is driving incentives for hiring and for work. Mm-hmm. And it's fascinating. We're so bound up in the culture in the United States. It's just a big aha whenever you go to another country. We started this, I started it years ago, but then Sherm, and Sherm didn't really want to be doing it somewhere around 2014-15 when Cuba became available. And China Gorman and myself put together a group of about 20 some odd people to go to China. And since we've been to, Eastern Europe, Singapore, you were with us in Japan. Mm-hmm. So, and we've been trying like crazy to get to Israel for the last couple of years. And basically what we do is we see professors of business. We talk to them and their students. We talk to startups and other kinds of companies, local, and as well as multinational. We talked to the government, ministers of whatever. In Cuba, we spoke, the first session we had was with the minister of propaganda.
Mhm.
So, it gets to be really interesting and a lot of ahas. And I love the conversation. So when a dozen people can have a conversation for several days about what they're observing, you learn an awful lot. And so for me, it's a great learning opportunity.
Yeah, and I love how immersive they are. A really, really fantastic experience. So let's do this. Jerry's going to drive today, and I'm going to be the podcast producer, sort of in the background. Let's introduce our first guest. It is our own Barb Ruess. Barb, you can here. Let's just fix the screen a little bit. Say hello to everybody, and give us an intro for those who are not fortunate enough to know who you are. Give us a little escalator pitch on what you do. Employee number 3 at CXR.
I'm going to start working that into my normal introduction, that I'm employee number 3 at Crossroads. Yeah. So I am the VP of operations here at Career Crossroads. And as in many places, operations is a nice big umbrella. So that could be everything from, helping run the logistics and setting up the meetings and finding speakers and finding guests for our podcast, to marketing communications and overseeing all sorts of member management and things behind the scenes. But my favorite thing is just getting to talk to members and interact with them and learn more about the work that they're doing and how I can connect them with each other.
So basically, Barb does all the work.
Yes.
That's it. That's pretty much it.
I would agree on.
All right, and Barb, you went on this trip, so we brought you in here. It says a no-brainer. I'm excited to hear what you're going to have to say, and then we also have another special guest with us today, longtime industry friend, Kristen Bailey. Kristen, say hello to everybody.
Hi, everyone. So excited to be here and talk about this amazing journey that we took together. So my name is Kristen Bailey. I am currently the VP of Talent Acquisition at Paradox. If you are unfamiliar with Paradox, we are a technology startup. We make conversational recruiting software that helps to free up talent acquisition professionals and hiring managers from all of the things that they don't want to be spending their time doing, so they can spend more time with people. I have had a long history with CXR. Before I joined Paradox last year, I spent many years with Amazon and had the pleasure to get connected to this amazing community. So we had so much fun, and I'm really excited to be here to talk about our experience.
Well, and before I duck into the shadows just a little bit, I do want to call out, it is really interesting to have, you're in the vendor space, but you're on the TA side. So a lot of the podcasts you see, when you get somebody in, right, you get somebody who's talking about the product or the expertise in the space or, the platform, et cetera, but you're the TA leader. So you're all hiring all the time. So I love it.
Yeah.
All right. So Jerry, I'm going to give you the mic, obviously, because you were the poobah that was running the show. So I'd love to hear.
Believe me, I wasn't running the show. I was just sitting off to the side. Everybody figured out very quickly that China managed a lot of the gracious discussions with people that we had to deal with. And Barb, in her own way, helped with the logistics at various points in time where things got stuck. So it's always great. What I want to do, though, is jump right in and ask the two of you what there has to be, a little bit of a glimmer that was an aha moment. Maybe there were several, but give me one aha moment during the course of the week that we had together. And Barb, why don't I start with you?
Okay, I was going to let Kristen go first, so I didn't steal any of her thunder, but I'll happily go first. I do have multiple takeaways. I'm going to pick one that I think sort of ties together both culturally and the business side. It was interesting, the time that we were there, I would say it's probably 60-40, 60% business related discussions, meetings, people that we were meeting, and then 40% just pure culture, which I certainly soaked up every minute of that I could and tried to give myself a few more on the side. But I think my biggest takeaway from all of those discussions is the can-do spirit that I heard from all the Israelis, whether it was from the startup panel that we listened to, whether it was people we were having dinner with, whether it was even the people in the different government ministries that we talked to. There is clearly, and I don't know if it's probably a lot of things. I don't know if it's because Israel is such a young nation. I don't know if the required military service, that's a whole other topic, that they all go through. If it's the fact that they are truly a desert nation with no resources really of their own. So they have to, just from a living standpoint, they have to be pretty creative in their solutions. But I loved the spirit and the energy that I heard from Israel, and I thought it was distinctive.
It certainly was. Kristen, how about you?
Yeah, I would echo everything that Barb said. Something that I was reflecting on a little bit was I think this was a really special design of a trip. I've had the privilege of traveling internationally quite a bit. I've led global teams in the past, and I think so often, we go on a journey, you go visit your teams and you spend a lot of time in the office and a lot of time in conference rooms. And one of the things that I loved that we got a chance to do was really to learn about the country itself, to learn about the culture, to learn about the people, and balance out this experience over maybe a few extra days that I think helped me come away with such a deeper appreciation for what it means to do business in Israel, what it means to support and hire talent and manage talent in Israel, grow and develop talent. I think that the additional investment of time that we made and this really interesting, well-rounded learning experience was unlike many of the other business trips I've taken where, I feel like I've got a lot of stamps in my passport, but I came away with a much deeper, rich understanding of Israel than I was expecting.
Yeah,
So
I think there's a surface feel that we all have for different kinds of countries. Sometimes it's misinformation, but in the case of service, in the case of Israel, most people do realize that everyone after high school, with some exceptions, everyone goes into the service. And they usually go in for 2-3 years, that kind of thing. In the United States, it's a little bit longer. It's often 4 to 6. And I had an aha moment when I suddenly realized that Israel is a very small country. And in the United States, if you go into the service, if your kid goes in the service, you don't see him or her for months on end. In Israel, with few exceptions, you might be seeing them every single day. They could be coming home. And you know why? It's because they don't make much money. It's a volunteer. It's a volunteer army. It was clear they didn't make enough money for them to feed themselves. So parents were still responsible in some respects for helping out. I found that amazing. But I also realized how immersive then the entire society is in this part of a military culture that is a commitment to defending their nation. And that, by the time they finish that, and then they seem to all want to go somewhere else, for a year, and they've got some money to do it. So we learned a lot about those kinds of things. It's no wonder that when they come back, they are a lot more mature than most other folks who are going to college, if you will, on the professional level, or starting a career in a trade, and they're much more likely to have a motivation that is very intense and very confident of what they're doing. And that's that spirit, I think, that you're talking about, Barb. And it's to me that whole piece of it really feeds into how they jumpstart their careers when they're in their mid-20s.
Yeah. So, and I'm going to toss this to you in a second, Kristen. The other thing about the military is the connections they make, and how often we heard people say, "Oh, I found this opportunity because I served with, so-and-so," or, "Oh yeah, when it was time for us to make a hiring shift, I reached out to the people from the unit that they served with." And the reason I was going to point out to Kristen is, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that the team in Tel Aviv for Paradox, didn't they all get to know each other that way too?
Yeah, some of the connections started there and then continued. So so some of the people who had joined the startup came through connections through military service. And I do think it's interesting though, I was sitting with our team for lunch when I was in the office, and everyone kind of went around and shared what their role was in the military, in lots of ranges of what people did. But I think it also kind of creates this sense of urgency to get your career started, because they've, the trade-off is like, yes, they're more mature coming out of military and university. Sometimes they don't even have to complete university because they've received such rich training through the military that they can go straight into their career. But relative to like the experience that we might have in the States of going to college and you're pretty young, and then they just feel this sense of urgency to get going, right? And they've all had this amazing shared experience that kind of has you grow up a little bit quickly. So I think that we felt that through that sense of duty and service, and they were just taking their careers and the opportunity to build a business so seriously. Was rather impressive.
And then we saw an awful lot of the startup nation. Now, part of it, I think, was we intended to talk to a number of different startups, Paradox being one, Panologic being another, Hired Score was another that was very helpful. So we had contacts with folks who had teams in Israel, but we also recognized that a lot of the folks in the military were part of these technology units that kind of help them think through the way in which they might want to be involved in technology when they got out. So it seems to me that there's a lot of seeds planted for startups, and then of course there seems to be a lot of investment there as well.
Yeah.
We did have one night where we had a lovely dinner at Hired Score's founder's apartment, and that was very enjoyable. There were some investment folks there with us. I think that for me that was a really good set of conversations that we had. How about the tourism piece? Was there any one thing that stood out? Because obviously, the United States is Israel may be a young nation, but it really is very old when it comes to the cultures in the Middle East. And so when they're talking about, time, they're talking about 2,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago, and we're struggling with thinking, 400. So tell me a little bit about what you saw that you hoped to see, perhaps, or that you thought was a surprise from a tourism point of view.
I would say maybe two things. I think one is I think saying old takes on a new definition, right? And when you said, the U.S. is a young nation, it's just really amazing to have, thousands and thousands of years of history that we were able to learn about in Israel. And then also just the size. I think one of the comparisons that we were given was that Israel would fit inside Lake Michigan, if that was correct. And I think that's, so it's pretty amazing. We covered a lot of ground as well, from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, and then some of the other, we went up north to Haifa. I think, so it was pretty amazing that within, a week, we were able to see so much. I think that was pretty special as well.
Cool.
Yeah, I think so too. I loved the day that we got to spend wandering the alleys and shops and in the old city of Jerusalem and the walled city. That was amazing. But it's funny, Gerry, you mentioned just a few minutes ago how we had that amazing dinner at Athena Karp's place, and we got to meet some people. I think perhaps my favorite experiences that we had in Israel were just when we got to have the different dinners. And that dinner that we had, we got to share a Sabbath dinner with someone who lives in Jerusalem. She opened her home to us, and we got to go in her home and learn all about the Sabbath dinner and learn about her and share that meal. And that was a really special highlight. It's something that a lot of people get to go to Israel and they get to walk the alleys of Jerusalem, or they might get to see the beautiful hills and gardens in Haifa, but I don't think very many people get to have that experience.
Cool.
Well, I would say, like, one of the things I love about learning about a new place, a new city, a new culture is through food. And so I think I think I said, I've never eaten so many beautiful vegetables on a business trip ever before in my life. It was spectacular. And again, being able to be not only in some amazing restaurants, but also in some homes, and having home cooked meals was such a treat as well. And again, you just feel like you learn so much about the culture through those experiences.
Yeah, I think a peak moment for me was just seeing the importance of Masada when we went to that. I thought that was very significant. It's part of the military culture as well. And it's just an interesting story. There are some controversial elements of that story, and our guide basically said he understood that, so did the society, but they decided to accept the story because it's so meaningful to where Israel is today and going tomorrow. So I thought that was kind of neat.
Well, I love the fact that each of you you're not just talking about the startup leaders that you met or the established organizations and the teams and the leaders that you met there, but you're also talking about the immersion into the culture and into people's homes, which I found when we did Japan, Gerry, together. And if you have done many of these, I found that to be so valuable, to really just be feel more like part of that community, and to really sort of walk a half a mile in a local's shoes.
Yeah, I think you see in the culture the kind of commitment that the society has to work together, to engage. We saw the efforts that were being made by Ernst & Young and PandaLogic, and I think one or two others relative to one of the tensions that isn't talked about in the United States hardly at all, and that is the tension between the secular Jews and the ultra-religious Jews. The ultra-religious Jews, the men do not work. They do not go to military service. They are supported by the state because they study Judaism. And the state, when it was founded, decided it would support that. However, they also have very large families, and the cost to the state is growing at a rapid pace. So there's this concept of how do we take this diverse group, and that's how they look at diversity, by the way, is they view one of the diverse elements of their society as the ultra religious. And so they've been hiring a lot of the women who are ultra religious who will work, but not with any men around, and only for so many hours a day. So the accommodations are really unlike anything we would see here in the United States. So it's kind of amazing when you start looking at how they have programs that relate to DE&I. They're talking about Palestinians, and then obviously there's an issue with how does the Palestinian get to work? How does that person get out of where they were to where they need to be for work? Becomes an interesting set of issues as well. So between the politics, the diversity, the home kind of thing, I think we had an extraordinary time.
I have two questions for you before we wrap up. And I think it was mentioned earlier, Athena Karp was just a wonderful and super generous host to have the team there, along with the myriad of, from what I understood, and the pictures were amazing, these startup leaders. And so my question really is, I guess to each of you, was there a big takeaway for you as to why maybe we see so many startups coming out of Israel? I mean, and this may be anecdotal for me, but it seems to me that proportionately we see way more startups in the tech space, at least in our industry, coming out of that market than nearly anywhere else.
Well, I think it was at EY where they said, and I'd have to go fact check myself, but where they said, I think Israel was second only to Silicon Valley as far as the number of startups that they have. And I think a big part of that is their defense industry is very high tech. So I think a lot of the people, the young people who are going through the required military service, many of them are going to be embedded in that technology. So I think they come out with a much different perspective of what they can do with technology and a much different base. I think that's certainly part of it. Kristen, what did you think about why there were so many?
Yeah, I think the other piece of it too was, many of the people we talked to talked about it isn't a country with a significant amount of other types of natural resources. And so they invest heavily in human capital. And so the combination of the military experience, the focus on technology, the focus on education, that experience where people are coming out of the military and they're like, they want to go get their life started. And so this entrepreneurial mindset exists. And people are, they're trained and educated, and they've worked in some pretty, high stakes types of situations that I think prepares them for taking risks, prepares them for building. And so I think it's just this really kind of special combination of factors that contribute to that.
I think they really like the small group aspect of that as well, in terms of how they pull together. And I think of Maya Huber, who is also was very, very nice and gracious in giving us an opportunity to have a dinner with her on the water. So I thought that was really kind of cool. And she was a different kind of entrepreneur from some of the others. It wasn't a tech-based focus that she had. But I do believe that there's the other factor is there is a lot of money coming that way when somebody has a good idea. And so I think a lot of these folks who are now a little bit more mature, not necessarily wanting to go into a large corporation, having some friends and that innovation spirit, if you will, coming up with interesting ideas that need to be fleshed out. And somebody seems to be always stepping up with some bucks.
I love that. Well, so let's do that. We're going to start with Gerry. I asked, because Gerry knows the question. I ask this question at the end of every podcast. Gerry never gets to answer the question because he's always co-hosting with me. But Gerry, if you were going to write a book about your experience, your trip to Israel, what would the title of that book be?
I'd steal it from Masada, Live Free, Die Free.
Okay. Plagiarism's hard work. Nobody's going to knock that. All right. Barb, how about you?
So is my book just about Israel?
About your trip overall.
Yeah. I think I'd want to take some sort of a broader view and just say something about why taking an immersive trip is beneficial. It's not a very good title, but yeah, something around why it's important to not just visit a place, but try to immerse yourself in the culture. So that's what it would be about. And then I'd have to think about a title.
Okay. All right. Start with the subtext, subtitle, work your way up. That's why they give us editors. That's fine. Publishing companies. That's good. Yeah. Kristen, how about yourself? What would the title of your book covering your trip to Israel be?
Oh my gosh, what a great question. It'd be something along the lines of get out of the conference room, right? I think that's, to kind of sum up this experience, and the different elements of, whether it's the tourism, the eating, the relationships, and the learning. I think it would be something like that. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, now let me ask you, and we're going to work it back. Who would you give the first signed copy to?
Everybody on the trip.
Yeah.
See, I would give it to my kids and all my kids' friends. Well, I guess it's only one copy. I'd give it to one of my kids because I want them to think about those perspectives now.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's gonna sell really well, Barb. So you're gonna have a lot to be able to give out. So it's gonna be good.
And all you got to do is put it on Amazon in a category, and boom, you're a bestseller in an Amazon.
That's right. That's how it works.
We know how that game works. Yeah. Perfect. Well, look, Barb, thank you so much for joining the show today. Gerry, you're always on here. It's fine. Kristen, we just appreciate your time too. Thanks for taking the time out, not just to go on the adventure with the entire delegation, but then to also, join us afterwards to do a little recap. We're really grateful for that.
It's my pleasure. I mean, I think it's what makes this community so special and why I enjoy it so much is just the opportunity to learn. Those opportunities just continue. So I appreciate it.
Fantastic.
Yeah, we were a dozen folks, all of whom sees what we're doing through a slightly different window. And I really am very grateful to listen to my colleagues, my peers and colleagues who see it just a little different than I do, because that's really where a lot of the learning comes from.
I will tell you I did not expect this. The demographic, when I saw the first team photo of all of you, a dozen of you that went on this trip, Gerry, you were the only male in the group.
There were a lot of jokes that seemed to appear randomly on the internet in relation to that, and I did not respond to any of them.
Good. You're a good man, Charlie Brown. Yeah. All right. Well, look, I'm just going to do this real quick. Everybody hang out for a second. I'll just remind everybody, cxr.org/podcast. That's where you're going to find more of these episodes. You can listen to previous episodes and, of course, what's ahead. We got a couple of those coming out we're excited about. And then I'll just promote one more thing, cxr.org/events. So if you are a current member, and even if you're not a current member, you can kind of get a look at what's going on in the space and what we've got coming up, live events. We've got the monthly lectures. We just had a fantastic lecture given by Anthony Forster. Just a wonderful segment done, about an hour long, on closing the gender gap, that divide that is in tech. It's just a fantastic job on that. I encourage you to check that out. It's in the library. But you can also see what's coming up on the events. It's down the road. And with that, we're just going to say we will see everybody next week. And hopefully you've connected with each of us on LinkedIn. So we'll see you online. Take care, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the CXR channel. Please subscribe to CXR on your favorite podcast resource and leave us a review while you're at it. Learn more about CXR at our website, cxr.works, facebook.com and twitter.com/careercrossroads, and on Instagram @careerxroads. We'll catch you next time.